Okay, can everyone see that?
Perfect.
How do I? Oh, right, Hannah, you just give me the cue to go on to the next slide. So go for it.
Yeah, sure. So I'll probably do a bit of an introduction then. So I'm Hanna, and obviously, so I've been invited to talk about PPC, because this is exactly what I've been doing for the last 14 years. Yeah, we can go to the next slide. So I just wanted to start with a quote, which I actually quite like. Every beginning, it might not be a kind of as straightforward as you might think, but started learning anything is never easy. But especially with PPC, it's all about doing. So I know that you've been learning about PPC today, and obviously through just in general about digital marketing in the last couple of weeks. So yeah, as with anything, digital marketing is no different, and especially PPC, which I'm gonna dive into in a minute. So yeah, I'm Hanna, and I am currently paid media lead at Executive Law in Manchester. So I've been doing PPC for the last 14 years. It's actually okay probably to go into next slide, John, as well. So I've been doing PPC for the last 14 years, having worked for different types of companies, whether it's agency or in-house as well. And I just thought, obviously, I was asked to talk about PPC today for yourselves. And I just thought that the way that I'd like to structure it is more based on, my own experience, and just give you some insights what it's like doing PPC, whether you choose to do it as a kind of full-time role or just maybe as a side business, because obviously e-com has been quite big, and it's never been as big since COVID. So yeah, and everything is about online these days. There are lots of opportunities. So yeah, so whether you choose to do it as a career or just want to learn a little bit more about it. So this is what it's all about. And I'm, obviously here to give you any insights, answer any questions, give any additional information. So I actually, just talking about kind of my career path, I actually wanted to be an accountant, just because I like numbers. And that's also kind of the way I think my brain works. I like to be organized, structured. And yeah, that's what I like numbers. That's kind of what I thought I'm going to do. And I started an accounting course, which is like a foundation if you want kind of to build on it and go into it professionally. It's called AET, which is the name of the Association of Accounting Technicians, essentially. I started in 2009, and I did it in St. Helens. I finished it in 4 years. Obviously doing it part-time. As I was working full-time, I started working full-time in PPC, and the plan was never actually to work in PPC. And if anything, I've never heard about PPC before. So this is, I think, the beauty of it. That it's just something you learn on the job, you learn on the spot, and then you realize I like it. You think how it matches, your skills, and then you just go with it. So yeah, as I started doing my accounting course back in 2009, I got a full-time role working for a company called Avato. which is part of a Bertelsmann Group. It's a German outsourcing company, so they outsource finance, tech, and one of their clients back then was Microsoft. So what a lot of these big tech companies do is essentially they outsource either some level of support or what it was in our case. So essentially, I don't know if you ever spoke to Google or, for example, regarding Google Ads. What those companies do, they actually kind of filter all advertisers based on spend. It's all about the spend for them. And then when you fall into a specific tier, then obviously the level of support provided for advertisers depends essentially on spend, and also the quality of the support and information shared, access to tech, any features, alphas, betas, which is essentially when a new feature is released by these big tech companies, it never essentially just kind of rolled out to everyone else. They like to keep some of them kind of whitelisted, if you want, and essentially kind of at least it's presented as a privilege, if you want. So you need, for example, to go on a waiting list and then be whitelisted for a specific feature if it's relevant for your business vertical or your account. So this is what they do essentially, and the lower level of support based on spend was essentially outsourced to this company called Avato, and this is where I started. Essentially, all of the training we received back then I received through the whole of my time there. I was there for 4 years. Essentially, 3.5 years. It was all done by Microsoft. So as you can imagine, it's first class training. And back then, essentially, I started in tech support, providing support to. It changed names so many times, but back then it was called Microsoft Ad Center. And so Microsoft Ad Center is the advertising platform, or now it's called Microsoft Ads for Bing users. And Bing is obviously the search engine. It's Microsoft search engine. So this is where I started, got trained, started talking to the customers. And essentially, this is how you learn about the platform. And so I was continuing with the course through the whole of my time at Avato. I did progress to what they call a quick launch specialist, which is essentially just instead of just talking to anyone, a kind of the lower level of support based on the spend customers or small businesses usually, then you would get like a book of business with higher budgets, and it's a different type of support and work as well with the clients. More sort of, I'd say, you have more ownership. Those clients, they advertise on constant basis. They need optimization support and account management. So pretty much, an agency structure. And essentially, I realized, through the whole of my time there, I realized, I really like it. And what I also realized, because I actually I remember this is when I set up my profile on LinkedIn, and I was actually really nicely surprised how often I was approached by recruiters. So I realized, there is a demand for the role. It sounds quite interesting. Why not just continue with it, whilst I finish my studies, my accounting studies. And this time kind of progressed. So I decided, after working on behalf of Microsoft ad center. Obviously, everyone is using Google, and this is what I just wanted to do. I just wanted to get more experience with Google Ads, because every time I would speak to a recruiter, obviously they ask, what platforms you worked with, what clients you worked with. And so my next step was to get more experience with Google Ads. And this is when I went and worked for kind of smaller agencies, smaller local agencies. She still gave me, this overview of the platform. And I can tell that Microsoft, they just pretty much copy all of the features from Google Ads. They just add the interface for Microsoft Ads. It looks different, but all of the features, they just do exactly the same as in Google, which was quite easy, and then obviously working with Google accounts, then I started getting more and more, obviously, experience and confidence working with another platform. And by that time, essentially, I finished my course, and I got an offer from a company called General Electrics, which actually did seem like a dream job. And I just thought, that's it, the stars aligned. I finished my course. This offer came through. The company is based in Manchester. And I thought, yeah, that's it, I'm going for it. So I pretty much, it was a bit of it was a switch of kind of career, really. Although that was the initial plan to work in finance. So there I was, I moved to Manchester, started a new role. And as I was, kind of going through everything, I just realized it wasn't as much for me, because I was lacking, that autonomy that you have, and independence working, for example, in PPC. And by that time, obviously I was working, although it was all within agency environment, I had my own clients. I was, covering the strategy side and the activation side of things. But yeah, really a lot of independence and getting good results, and then suddenly going into a new role in finance. And I just realized, the role I was in, I can obviously talk about all finance roles, but the role I was in, I just thought, it wasn't as fast-paced in tech, specifically, everything just changes so fast. There's so much to learn. You constantly need to keep an eye. Google, Microsoft, they're constantly changing things. You just need to keep on top of everything. And this is what I was used to. And suddenly I just come into this really quiet environment where nothing's really been changing for quite a long time. And I just found myself a bit, just realized maybe that's not the path for me. And and I was just really missing PPC. So just going back, to obviously today we talk about PPC, the key skills that you really need for PPC. Being analytical really helps, because it's all about working with the data. So numbers, yeah. Working with the data, constantly looking at data. It's almost like data analytics in a way, but it's about looking at the data and making sense of it, finding patterns, because obviously there are different ways to advertise and do marketing, but PPC is the quickest way to gather the insights about your customers. I'm sure obviously you must have learned about SEO. You would know SEO natural listings. You don't pay for them. You don't need to pay Google for them, but you do need to pay someone to get you in the right position in the search results. but it takes time. With PPC, it's the quickest way to get as much visibility on in the search engine as possible, and also the quickest way to gather information about your customers. So it's all about not just it's making sense of the data, finding patterns for account optimizations, and making changes in the accounts based on those patterns. So yeah, and being comfortable with doing it every single day, non-stop, because things just change in PPC really fast. If a competitor suddenly comes in, or someone starts suddenly bidding more, straight away just affects your ads position, and you see it from the numbers in your account straight away, because the cost per click suddenly becomes too expensive. That impacts your ROI, cost per acquisition, cost per sale, whatever you want to call it. So yeah, after my small detour from PPC, after a year at this finance company, I decided to go back into PPC, and that happened back in 2016 when I started working for an agency called Wavemaker, which is part of Group M. Group M's it's essentially a global company, a network company. It's an agency. Well, there are different types of agencies and businesses within the network. It's all to do with media and advertising. And I start, so essentially, as you look at my kind of career progression, career path, so I started working on behalf of Microsoft Advertising. Then I went to smaller agencies to get that experience with Google. And the plan, the ambition has been to work for a bigger agency, because as I mentioned in the beginning, it's all about the spend. The higher the budget you work with, obviously the more experience you get, but also the more access to bigger tech you get from Google through the account support, account managers. So I knew about the bigger agencies, bigger opportunities, but obviously how do you get that experience? And again, the stars aligned, but this time in a good way. And I started this role working for this agency called Wavemaker. The budgets were a completely different level compared to what I worked with before. Multi-million daily spend, which is a completely different story, which I really enjoyed. But essentially up to that date, all of my experience was within agencies. And agencies are good because you get to work with different clients and different verticals. And that's a really good way to build your experience, because, obviously, if you just work on one client, this is kind of the only strategy you know of. But if you learn about different verticals, you start seeing how things compare as well. And this is where, there's a really good chance to build your experience. And then if you do want to go and work in-house, then you can at least you can give as many examples of the previous experience as possible. So that's essentially been my approach to the career path. And so maybe actually, Joanna, if we could probably go not the next slide, but the one after. It just shows different options of what you can do within PPC. So really, if you think about it, the type of clients and accounts you can work with, really it's either B2C or B2B, how different businesses work, but also it's either e-com, where you just sell something, or lead gen, pretty much. And then you can do it with either a B2B or a B2C setup, but usually it's a B2C most of the, if you ever decide to kind of have a full-time career in PPC, most demand is obviously in B2C e-com, I'd say, where the big budgets and big spend is. And then, so if you approach it from this perspective, so when we think about e-com, then how would you structure your accounts? You would always work with brand, non-brand keywords. So by brand, it's, the actual name of the brand, because, if you know a brand, this is how customers are likely to search on Google. And then also, it's also good, obviously, for brand protection if a competitor suddenly starts bidding on your brand keywords. You can, Google is very specific about trademark. So the rule of thumb is you can bid on a competitor's keyword, but you cannot, you cannot use them in the ad copy. This gets flagged straight away by Google, and the ads just get disapproved because normally businesses have a trademark for their brand name, and it's protected, by law. And it's also submitted to Google, so Google knows, okay, so this customer is trademark protected, and they just detect it from their side. If someone's bidding on those protected trademarked keywords, brand names, then this is flagged straight away. So this is where we talk about keywords. So brand, non-brand. Non-brand is non-brand or generic keywords. So I'll give you an example of one of the clients I worked for. Look Fantastic is a big name, obviously in the UK, in the beauty industry. So brand will be Look Fantastic, non-brand, anything related to beauty, hair products, skincare. So that would be an example of a non-brand. And then talk about e-com, the type of campaigns that you would find either in Google Ads or Microsoft Ads would be shopping campaigns. These are the type of ads with the images. I'm sure you've seen them before on Google, just probably didn't know what they were called. It's the type of campaign that you can set up in Google Ads or Microsoft Ads. PMax, Performance Max, is the type of campaign that essentially combines different kind of platforms. You can advertise on YouTube, you can advertise on search from one campaign. There's been some mixed reviews about this type of campaign, but essentially Google is constantly trying to evolve and give different options to advertisers, and that's a good example of it. And then, so for e-com, the type of platforms you would use is either Google Ads, Microsoft Ads, as a kind of the biggest platforms. Of course, you can use Meta as well, and Instagram. A lot of businesses do these days. Well, I'd say, so this would fall more under paid social and paid media or paid search. It's Google Ads and Microsoft Ads mainly. And then when we talk about the B2B approach and or B2C, but more about lead gen, so the user journey is usually different, but again, every business is different. So when we talk, for example, about e-com, what we call the conversion window on Look Fantastic can be, for example, a couple of days. So obviously, someone clicked on the ad, they know what they want to buy, they buy straight away. The conversion window on other businesses and other verticals might be different. And when it comes to B2B specifically and lead gen, it can be, a year. So the approach to the user journey and the strategy, the marketing strategy will be different. The type of platforms you would use would also be different. You would focus more on LinkedIn, I'd say, because obviously it's kind of a lead gen focused platform, very business orientated, and you can target by company name. You can also target by company name on Meta, but the options are much more limited compared to LinkedIn. And as you might know, LinkedIn is actually owned by Microsoft. So what Microsoft have been actually doing with their Microsoft Ads platform, they've been releasing LinkedIn settings to Microsoft advertising, Microsoft Ads settings as well. So you kind of get the best of the both worlds, if you want. On Google, you cannot target by company name. So you suddenly see a difference in the platforms, although Google is used the most. So, this is where the biggest market share is. So you can suddenly see how a different strategy can dictate different. So a different industry can dictate different strategy, different approach to user journey, and different platforms. And obviously, then the setup will be quite different as well on those platforms, and the approach to optimizations as well. So on LinkedIn, the type of ads you'd use, the image ads, you can use them with the lead gen forms or without. This is where I'm sure, I don't know if you've ever submitted your details to download something on LinkedIn. So this is an approach, it's quite a soft approach instead of going for the kind of cold call sale approach. We'll give you some information, we'll give you an asset, but we'll get your details in return, which is what businesses want, isn't it? And then they'll reach out, or at least, if you remember what I was saying in the beginning, it's all about gathering that data about potential customers. Who is interested in my products? This is how you gather it, essentially. So yeah, and maybe just to go back to the timeline slide, Joanna, then I'll just quickly finish talking about my experience. So yeah, after my time at the agency, I wanted to see what it's like working in-house, and I got a role at a company called the Hot Group. As you might know, Look Fantastic is part of them. It's just one of the brands they have. They do specialize in well-being, beauty industry. So yeah, that was quite an interesting experience. And just in general, so essentially you can either work for an agency, and this is where you get you can work on either, for example, if it's a big client, then you're going to work on one client, or you might work on you might look after different smaller clients depending on the spend. When you work for an agency, then you work with clients, and normally you work with a marketing person, manager from the client side, and usually they'll already have a strategy. So all they'll do, they'll just come to you and say, this is what we want to achieve. Not always, but obviously they'll have a strategy in place or in mind. They'll come to you and say, this is what we want to achieve. What do you recommend? This is what we've been doing before. Then you might work on kind of on a new strategy. What I'm trying to say is, when you work within an agency, you don't get obviously as much information about the business as if you were working in-house. So working in-house, I think you get the option, you get much more involved within the business. It's a much better opportunity to learn about the business, because how can you create a strategy without kind of knowing the business inside out? That's what I think is really good. But then obviously when you work in-house, or just for for one specific company, you don't get the benefit of working on different verticals you get within an agency. So you see the differences kind of both worlds. My approach essentially was to work within agencies first and then go, build that experience and then go in-house. And this is what I've done so far pretty much. Currently, I'm working in-house as well, and it's more on the lead gen side. I'd say, again, what I was saying in the beginning, with e-com experience, you would get kind of many more opportunities in terms of the roles. Doesn't mean that you can't get big accounts and lead gen with a big spend, and obviously, where you can apply your knowledge and experience and contribute to the results and the new strategy. So this is pretty much in a nutshell. I hope I gave maybe some basic ideas of what PPC is like. Maybe just a couple of words to add about a day, kind of what a usual day looks like. So you would come in, you definitely check, yesterday's results, because normally in PPC you get daily targets, weekly targets, monthly targets, quarterly targets, yearly targets. And you need to obviously to understand how you performed yesterday, and then today's, optimizations will depend on that, on yesterday's performance, because you track the results and then you adjust, you take actions to optimize the account, and you just check if there were any drops in the performance, what worked, what didn't work. So you constantly gather those insights, and you provide to the management, whether it's working, in-house or for an agency. So yeah, and then a lot of businesses, some of the businesses I worked for, obviously, through the day you keep a very close eye on the performance. You monitor. Essentially, you need to be constantly on it. Can be very, very fast paced. It keeps you very busy. But if that's something you like, you enjoy, you have the skills, it's very rewarding, because it's essentially, you have so many different, you use so many skills. It can give you an option, to work independently. Also, obviously, you work as part of the team with other teams like an SEO team, usually very closely with web developers as well. So if you have or get any knowledge, web dev, it doesn't need to be, very in depth, but just understanding of how a website is structured, how it works. Because it's also important, for example, for setting up conversion tracking. So being technical, if you like technical things, nerdy things. And but the good thing, for example, about PPC is that you also work with clients. It's also about, being able to manage clients' expectations, presenting the results, convincing them about the strategy. So it's also a lot. I think it's just you use so many skills. So you work with people, but you also work with tech, you also work with numbers. And, when you get the experience of working with the platforms, you understand how the different features within Google, for example, can be used to achieve the results. And you get those results, it's very rewarding. So I highly recommend PPC. You won't be disappointed. It's a good career with so many different opportunities. I can definitely say, obviously I started way before COVID. During COVID, I think even more businesses realized if they didn't have an online presence, that only increased, and it's only gonna get even busier and busier. That's still all I can say about the industry. So there will never be a shortage for PPC roles, although kind of obviously you can see that the trend is moving towards automation and AI in general in tech. Even within Google, for example, before we would manage bids manually, now there is much more AI involved. There is automated bidding as well, but it still keeps you busy. There's so much to do, and if you enjoy it, yeah, it can be a great career and a very rewarding career. So yeah, I definitely didn't stick to 30 minutes.
Okay. Is there more at the end of this? Do you want me to go through it? Oh, there we go. Thank you.
That's it.
Oh, I'll stop sharing my screen. Has anyone got any questions? Should we open up the floor, Hannah, for questions?
I think I saw it. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I should say we've got one that's come through into the chat, which is how do you build a portfolio / CV of PPC if you don't have any experience?
That's a good question. How do you build a portfolio? Because essentially, what I was saying right in the beginning, the quote I included, it's all about doing, and it's all about hands-on experience with the account. Obviously, how do you get that experience if you don't have an experience? If you at least have the knowledge, the basic knowledge, and the way to build a portfolio is obviously work on projects. But how do you start? How can you start getting those projects? So, a lot of agencies, for example, the whole career path, it usually starts from what we call account executive. And a lot of agency, will take on for those roles. And this is where you learn. This is essentially where you start, and this is where you learn. Because of what I was saying before, there is so much demand in this industry. So many agencies just recruit and they just teach you on the spot. It's more about understanding whether it's the right path for you based on the skills required, and which is what I mentioned in the beginning, being analytical, working with the numbers and the data, and being comfortable more than anything, doing it every single day. That's the main question, to answer. Is it for me? Can I do it? And most importantly, do I enjoy it? Because if you answer that question, then if the answer is yes, then I would say definitely pass the exams, Google exams. They're all also structured for different levels, and also for those different types of campaigns I mentioned before. So there are exams, for mobile, display, search, shopping. There are so many different specialities, which hopefully I covered more in depth, and it was enough. Shopping for e-com, if you can crack that one, you can open an account with Google. You don't need to obviously start advertising, but you can at least start getting used to the platform, how everything is set up, which I'm sure you got the knowledge from, your PPC training today, and just getting used to the platform. And from the exam prep materials, there's so much available from Google, obviously, and it's all open source. Anyone can get access to it, and it's free as well for Google exams. So yeah, just if you have a qualification, that past exam in those areas, start from the small one, like a foundation one. And it'll as soon as you start kind of playing with it, open an account and just even trying to understand how it's all set up, it'll all start fall into place, because you'll understand how it's all linked. It's all linked. It's like maths. If you have like a maths sort of, you know, if you like maths, it's good. It's a good sign. It's very structured, very logical. Yeah. If you if you decide that, yeah, I get it, and it's all just about then going and getting a job and start applying the knowledge. And I can guarantee you, you know, having a certification under your belt, will be obviously it'll just show that you committed. You know, you've kind of, because there are a lot of, I'll tell you, there are a lot of people either going into PPC roles, exec roles from graduate roles, as part of a graduate scheme or an apprenticeship. But I've worked with quite a lot of execs, and I saw many execs just literally say, you know, that's not for me. But having that prep and understanding, you know, whether that's the right career path, that's half of the job done, really. It's just the rest is just getting kind of a bit of a knowledge, initial knowledge, and then selling yourself. But there are so many roles. Yeah, there is no shortage in that. I can guarantee you. I mean, I'm more than happy, you know, I'm constantly being asked, do I know someone? Do I know someone? And actually, I didn't put my the link to my profile on LinkedIn, but by all means, do get in touch, you know, with me on LinkedIn. Let's connect, because obviously, you know, I've got more than 1,000 followers as well. I think I need to check. But obviously, I'm connected to a lot of recruiters, and I'm constantly being asked, do I know anyone? So I'd like, you know, to be able to introduce potentially some of you to them. Yeah, because it's all about, you know, passing on the knowledge, and sharing, isn't it?
Yeah, perfect, thanks. And Joanna's just put your LinkedIn there in the chat for everyone, so I'm sure you're going to get a fair few requests coming your way after this this call. Maya, you've got your hand raised. Do you have a question?
Hi, yeah, thank you so much for today. It was inspiring. I would like to know how your day looks like in a work, like what you do from start to finish, like you do only PPC execution, or you meet clients, or how is looking like one of your days at work?
Yeah, sure. So I'll talk, for example, about my current role. So this is another kind of caveat. Obviously, the more you progress, it's not just a 9-to-5 job, you know. But again, it all comes down to, you know, do I like doing it? Because then it doesn't feel like a job, you know. So really, as soon as I wake up, I will check the results for yesterday. Then I'll tell the management straight away, because it's all about the numbers. You know, businesses rely on PPC a lot. That's how they, you know, exist pretty much these days, a lot of businesses. So it's checking the results, understanding where you are in terms of the performance for the week. And then, and this is what I was saying before, you know, then the more you progress, and especially if you work in house, it's going to be about, you're going to essentially get those instructions, let's say, from the either business owners or managers. You'll just get the guidance, you know, are we okay where we are? Do we need to push for more traffic? Do we need to pull back? And this is pretty much where your job is knowing then what levers can I pull in the platform to achieve those results. Yeah. So then in the morning, so yeah, you understand, you get the plan like for the day based on yesterday's performance. And then this is where you start digging into, for example, yesterday's results. Did you see any anomalies in the account? Did anything spike? You check the competitor insights, auction insights in Google, for example. You see, you know, did anyone suddenly start going more aggressive on the bid, increasing. Also, when I talk about PPC, I always say it works in exactly the same way as the eBay bidding. Yeah, so when you want to get something, you bid on a, you put the highest amount you're willing to pay when you bid for a product, but you don't, the whole game is in not knowing how much another person is bidding. And PPC model works in exactly the same way. You kind of, with automated bidding is slightly different, but with manual bidding, this is what it was based on. You put the maximum bid amount you're willing to pay, but not necessarily how much you're going to get charged, because it all depends on how much another advertiser is bidding, but you don't know, and he doesn't know, and they don't know. So essentially where the whole game is getting a higher position in the search results, but bringing the costs down, making those returns on investments essentially. Then you check yesterday's performance, how is everything performing today, because what I was saying before, you need to be in the accounts all the time, in the data, when you need to monitor the data. And then if you see any fluctuations, it's all about keeping an eye on them and then making the decisions based on those fluctuations. Then when you work with accounts, you'll understand is this type of amount of traffic and the spend and those CPCs by this time of the day, is this normal or is it not? You just already know, is this the normal amount of traffic or has it increased? So it's constantly, as I was saying before, making sense of the data. But then with time, you just make it on the fly, because you understand how all those metrics work together. And then it's based on the knowledge of the platform, do you need to make any changes in the platform or not, based on where you are, depending on the results. Sorry.
It's more analytical style.
Yes, very analytical. Yeah.
Okay. What about communication with customers or clients or?
So there are also, especially within agencies, there are roles. So when you start, you're only going to be more likely hands-on. It depends again on the environment. If it's a small agency, they might but normally when you start in agency specifically, you just hands-on, you just shadow someone, you learn the techie side of the platform, you get experience with that. And then as you progress more and more, then obviously that stakeholder management piece, it becomes more and more important, because you have strategies. How do you communicate that strategy? How do you get them on board? And then how do you defend the strategy? It's all about being able to communicate it, and it's all about also constantly communicating the results, keeping everyone updated. And that's what I was saying, there's a lot involved. But within agencies, you'll normally see, for example, on the PPC team, you'll usually a client does more than just PPC. Within agency, sometimes it's just PPC, and the agency structure, and depending on agencies as well, then you can have just account managers who will do the comms. Yeah, and then obviously they'll work with different teams, whether it's, for example, display, they'll have this more holistic view of the things, putting everything together, and there wouldn't be as much kind of hands-on on activation within accounts. There'll be more, like a comms role. But then again, usually people going into those roles, they would have had at least some, technical experience working on accounts in the past, because you need to, again, to be able to communicate and explain sometimes technical things in an easy way. So again, so many different roles, even with the knowledge whether you do PPC, just PPC or not, but the knowledge itself is very much in demand because, yeah, that's kind of just the world we live in, isn't it?
Yeah. Thank you very much.
And there was just a couple more in the chat if you've got time. But
Sure.
Perfect. What kind of backgrounds, obviously your background's accounting, do you tend to find people have when they're kind of transitioning into PPC?
So some of the, strongest, like best and most talented PPC people I've worked with, some of them they just dropped out of uni, So it's definitely not about any previous qualifications you've had before or even the studies you've done. I've seen so many people, coming from so many different backgrounds. Advertising, kind of marketing, advertising, yeah, it's good, but then it's the techie side of things that might not have necessarily been covered in the marketing degree. And then, as we know, things just change so fast. And can you even keep up with things, because what you learned yesterday might already change tomorrow. So this is you definitely, this is the type of role where you learn every single day and it just never stops. Yeah, all sort of backgrounds. If you like maths, that's ideal. That's all. Analytics and numbers, that's ideal for PPC. But doesn't mean, but I mean, it's more about the mindset, Yeah, and some of the kind of best and most talented people I've worked with in the past wouldn't even necessarily have a degree. So it's more about, do you like it? Can you do it? Do you enjoy it?
Perfect. Thank you. And then Kimberly asks, what's the best way to get your foot in the door with an agency?
Yeah, again, feel free to get in touch with me on LinkedIn and then also connect with me, because so essentially when you connect on LinkedIn, then my connections, and I'll double check, but they should be open. You should be able to see my connections on LinkedIn, and there's so many recruiters there. Feel free to reach out to them. LinkedIn, leverage LinkedIn. There's another thing I was going to say. Most of my jobs in the last 10 years, I got them through LinkedIn. Leverage LinkedIn to your maximum benefit. Everything is happening on LinkedIn. I mean, obviously, jobs advertised on just online as well. The best way to get, to the agencies, I mean, ideally through some sort of apprenticeship, that would be kind of the smooth kind of transition. And there are so many different apprenticeships. Some of the companies I worked in, they would take people from apprenticeships, but it doesn't mean, that you can get into an agency with no experience, and the qualification will do half of the job, I'd say. If you pass an exam, it's free. Why not?
I mean, Joanna's going to be hounding on about LinkedIn next week for our career session anyway, but
Yay!
Great place to be. I think like it's a necessity for anyone in marketing. And,
absolutely, yeah.
Perfect. I think I've gone through the ones in the chat. If I've missed you, feel free to raise your hand and shout out. But I think we've ticked everything off, Joe.
I think there was another one, just the last one. Is it possible to learn other skills like you have learned accounting outside of marketing to make it versatile and more options in the employer choosing the right candidate? Absolutely. The more skills you have, the better. What I told you today pretty much, about my experience, this is exactly what I tell during interviews. It's how you sell yourself, and knowing your knowing your strengths and when you combine it with what you like, it's, yeah, nothing can stop you, honestly. The sky is the ceiling, or is the ceiling even?
Sky's the limit.
There you go. There's no limit there even. Yeah, so
Thank you so much, Hannah. That was amazing. I've learned a lot there because I had no idea about PPC, so I feel like I've learned everything there. So that was great. Thank you so much for coming on. I will be sharing your LinkedIn in our Slack channels as well. So thank you for letting everyone sort of come to you and ask questions and sharing your network. We really appreciate that.
happy to do that. It's all about sharing, you know, the knowledge, the experience is what I like doing.
Lovely. Thank you so much. Right then, Dan, what's the plan now? Do you want us to jump off?
Yeah, I think what we'll probably do now is take a 15-minute break if that works for everyone. We'll come back at 1:15. Look out in your mentor group chats because you'll get new links coming through anyway, and we can kick off with the rest of the afternoon then.
Fab. Lovely. All right. Cheers, Hannah. I'll speak to you soon, and bye, everyone.
Bye bye. Nice to meet everyone. Bye.
Bye.